Hey everyone, Omogonix here and welcome back to a brand new Godot tutorial here on the channel. So in today's video I'm going to be teaching you guys how to add a blood splatter effect to your game by using both Godot's decals and particle system. The method I'll be teaching today is one I have made for an FPS project I'm making at the moment. I will be making a video showing off the early progress of that FPS game of mine at some point, so stay tuned for that. I've been working on it a lot, and I'm very excited to show it off to you guys. So if you guys do enjoy this tutorial, or you do learn something from it, be sure to consider liking, commenting, and subscribing for more, and let's get right into this tutorial. Alright, so as I mentioned in the intro, today I'm going to be showing you guys how to add a blood splatter effect to your game in Godot. So how we're going to be doing this is we're going to be using Godot's decals and particle system as well. We're going to be using them in combination to make the effect. So here I've got like this basic scene set up, right? And we've got a player here. And so what we're going to be doing as an example, right, is we're going to be making a script, so then whenever we press down a certain key, that will then make a blood splatter effect happen wherever our player is standing. So yeah, so first off, before we do get started, I want to show you guys decals first, since decals are going to be important for this. So here's what we're going to do. So in my main level scene right here, I'm just going to go add child node. And then you want to search up decal. So now here we have a decal. Now at first it will be empty. However, if you select your decal and then go to the inspector menu to the right, when you go down to textures, you just click on the textures drop down button here. And then with albedo, this is like the main like texture for your decal. Where it says empty, you can just go quick load. And then you can just select a certain texture that you want to use for your decal. So I'm just going to use the default Godot icon as an example. And now as you can see, my decal is being projected onto the floor. So basically decals are very good for like, you know, blood and stuff like that, or bullet holes, you know, like if you want to add bullet holes for your game. And what's great about decals is, you know, like they're great for any kind of surface, because as you can see here, right, the decal, it just goes up the stairs and it wraps itself around. Like that's really a good thing about decals, is they just wrap themselves around. Because you've probably, you know, seen certain methods of people doing like bullet holes for their games before, right? Where what they'll do is they'll use like a quad mesh, and then, you know, just have it position and rotate, you know, correctly to wherever it hit. But the thing is about, you know, using quads or planes is you can't like wrap them around objects. The good thing about decals is that you can actually just simply wrap them around objects and it doesn't take any effort at all. They just simply do it automatically, as you can see here. So yeah, so that is a very good thing about decals, and also you can increase their size as well. So if you want to, you know, increase, you know, their overall size, how much they spread. And yeah, it's also just a very easy way to add certain, you know, textures to your game, to your level. So yeah, that there is decals. They will be important for this. So now that I've showed you guys what decals are and how they basically work, what we're going to do now is I'm going to open up paint.net and I'm going to make a actual texture for the blood splatter effect. So what I recommend you guys do now is you open up whatever program you use to do, you know, art for your games, whether it be, you know, Photoshop or paint.net or whatever, right? Or Microsoft Paint even, if you use that. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to search up paint.net and I'm going to go into it. So here we have paint.net. This is usually what I use for a lot of textures in my games. I also use Paint 3D as well. That's another thing I use. But yeah. So anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm first off going to set the image size. So I'm just going to go image resize. And what I'm going to be doing for this blood splatter is I'm just going to do 512 by 512. You can do whatever width and height you want for your image's resolution. I'm just going to be doing 512 by 512. You can do a higher or lower resolution if you need to. And there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer. And then I'm just going to select the red coloring here, and I'm going to up the brush size to something like 70. And then now I'm just going to do some random red blob here. So this is going to be like the blood. And I know right now this looks pretty, you know, cartoonish or just, very MS Paint like, but we will be, adding some detail to it. You guys will see what I'm going to do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm then going to select the darker red. I'm just going to like do a bit of detail over the top of it, just like that. And there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Effects, Blurs, and then Gaussian Blur, if that's how you pronounce it. I've never really known properly how to pronounce that. I think it's Gaussian. But anyways, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the radius. And now we have a decent looking blood effect. And there we go. So there's how, you can make a blood effect if you want to in Paint.net. So I'm going to go OK, and boom. So now we have our blood effect. And then I can just, toggle the background, and now we've got a transparent background for our blood effect. So you do want to make sure, of course, when you are doing a, making your blood splatter effect image, that you do of course have a transparent background. You don't want a white background or anything like that. You want it to be transparent. And so yeah, so what we're going to do now is you want to of course just go File, Save As, and then save the image into your game files. Alrighty, so here I am back in my Godot project, and as you can see I now have a textures folder that I've just made, and now my blood splatter image is in this folder. So what we're going to do now is we are going to get out the decal again, just to, see how this blood effect looks, to make sure it looks alright. Go Textures, Albedo, and then we'll load in the blood. And boom, as you can see, the blood is now being projected onto the floor. And then if we move it up the stairs, for example, as you can see, it now projects itself up the stairs. So yeah, overall, decals are very good for blood splatter effects, because they just, they can position themselves correctly on, any geometry, basically decals are just very good for that kind of thing. So yeah, as you can see, it even just, moves up the wall here. So yeah, I do recommend that if you ever do blood for your games, like if, let's say for example, you're making a level, right? And you want to actually, add some blood around to show like, oh, there's been like a monster here and they've killed some people. Well, using decals is very good for that because, it just, wraps around any kind of geometry. Alright, so now that we've checked out our blood splatter effect and seen that it all works, let's actually now create a new scene. And it's going to be a 3D scene. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just rename this to blood effects, blood_effects, and then I'm going to press Ctrl S to save this scene, and I'm just going to save it into my scenes folder here. There we go. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be showing you guys how the particle systems in Godot work. So what this scene is going to be here is this is going to be a scene for our blood particle effect. So in order for us to do this blood splatter effect, right, we're going to be using both decals and a particle system. So we're going to be using the decals in order to, have blood go on the ground or just on any surface where the player is near, so then the blood can splatter onto it. And then we're going to be using a particle system to, project the blood, flying off the player as they get shot or whatever, right? So yeah. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be right-clicking on our node here, the parent node, and we're going to be changing the type of it. So we're going to be going particles, and you want to select GPU particles 3D. So now that we've got our particle system here, there are a few things that we do need to set up. So first up, what I recommend you do is you go down to Process Material. Where it says empty, you then press New Particle Process Material. So this is basically going to be all the properties for our particle system. And then withdraw passes, where you have pass 1, where it says empty, you then want to go select a quad mesh. So now as you can see, our quad mesh is being projected downwards. So basically when you create a particle system at first, the default setting for it is for the gravity to just go down by 9.8, by negative 9.8. So what we can do for our blood particle system here is, since we want the particles to be going all around, just shooting all around our player when, there's blood splattering, right? What we're going to be doing for that is you want to click onto your new process material. then you want to go down to accelerations, gravity, and then turn the gravity to 0. And boom, so now that will just keep it still right now. So now what we're going to do is at spawn, I think it's velocity, yeah, velocity. And then with the spread, set this to 180, which is the max amount you can set it to. And then with the initial velocity, you can just set this to a value above 0, like let's say 5 for example. And now as you can see, our particles are going all over the place now, so they're just pretty much shooting everywhere. Now the thing about quad meshes is that when you go behind them, you can't actually see them anymore since they're only projected on one side. So here's how we're going to fix that. So what we need to do is we need to go down to Geometry, Material Override, and then click on where it says Empty, and then New Stand Material 3D. So now we're creating a new material for our particle system. So this is how we're also going to add the actual blood splatter look as well. So you want to click on this, and then go down to Albedo, Texture, Quick Load, and now we're going to select Blood, and boom, now we have our blood texture. So as you can see, it is currently not transparent, but here's how we are going to fix that. So what we need to do is we need to go to where it says transparency, where it says disabled, you then want to select alpha, and now we have an actual blood splatter effect. As you can see, it is now being projected normally, and not just as a square. So now, in order to actually get these particles facing the player at all times, what we need to do is you need to go down to where it says Billboard, and then where it says Mode Disabled, you then click Enabled, and boom, now as you can see, the particles are facing the player at all times. So no matter where the player goes, the quad meshes will be rotating to face the player, basically. So to be honest, there's not really much else to do when it comes to our particle system. If you don't want to play around with the other stuff to do with the particle system, that's totally fine. However, there are a few other values that are worth playing around with. For example, you can actually set the amount of the particles that are emitted. Let's say, for example, you want to do more than 8, so something like 16, for example, or you might even want to do 32. So yeah, you can, have more particles if you want to as well, to get more of a, a bloody look if you want. And also, if you go down to where it says time, you can actually select, the lifetime of how long each particle, stays around for. So if we set this to 0.2, for example, as you can see, this is actually, more like an actual blood splatter effect now, as you can see. So yeah, so if you want to set the time value to something real low, like 0.2, that'll help out. And as you can see, this actually looks really, really good now. So yeah, be sure to play around with some of the values if you want to as well. It's all, very, fun to play around with all this sort of stuff. And plus, it's good to learn as well. So something else that you want to do is where it says one shot, you want to set this to true. So then the particle only plays once, because of course you don't want it to just constantly loop, you just want it to be a one-time thing. As you can see, the blood, whenever I press emitting, it emits once, and then it stops emitting. So yeah. So overall, I'm very proud of this effect so far. I think it is very good. And yeah, there's nothing really much else that we need to do with that. Again, if you want to play around with any of the properties yourself, any more of the properties, that's totally fine. But, this is totally fine for a blood splatter effect. Now, there are a few more things we will be doing for this blood particle system. And the first thing we're going to be doing is a script. And then after that, we're actually going to be adding a sound. So then whenever we actually have the blood splatter effect appear in our scene, there will be a sound to go with it, like a, blood sound, like a splatter sound, right? So yeah, so what we're going to be doing first is we're going to be doing a script. So what we're going to be doing is make sure you have your, your blood effects selected. And then in your inspector menu, if you scroll down to the bottom, it should say script empty. Click on where it says empty and go create new script. So now we're actually going to select a path for our script, so I recommend clicking on this folder here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create well, I've already got a scripts folder, but if you don't have a scripts folder already, just click on this icon up here, you know, the folder icon with the little green plus symbol, and then you can just write scripts, you know, go OK and create your new folder. But I've already got a scripts folder, so I'm just going to save my blood effects script into here. And there we go. And then when you've got your path all selected and everything's all good, then you go create, and boom. So where we have func ready, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be writing emitting equals true. So what that does is it basically makes sure that when our blood effects becomes active in a scene, what ends up happening is emitting will equal to true, because by default it's going to be false, especially if you have one shot enabled. If you do disable one shot and then you turn on emitting, you know, then that's when the blood effects will just be emitting by default when it enters your scene. However, since we need to use one shot for this blood effects, emitting will be false, so we need to set it true in a script. And then what we're going to do is we're then going to go await get underscore tree dot create timer. So we're going to be creating a timer. And then what you want to do is you want to enter in a value like a time, you know. So I'm going to be doing 1 second, for example, so 1.0. And then I'm going to be doing false. So what false means is this basically means, will this timer process when the game is paused? So if you have true, then that means yes. If you have false, then that means no. Of course, the blood splatter effect, I don't want it to delete whilst the game is paused. So I'm going to be setting this to false. And then we're going to be doing dot timeout. And boom. So basically, after the 1 second timer, or however long you want the particle system to be in your scene for, what you then want to do is you then want to go q underscore free, and what that does is it frees the node from your scene, so then the blood effects is no longer part of the scene. And the reason as to why we do this is to free memory from our game, so then we don't have, you know, like let's say for example you have all these, you know, blood splatter effects happening because you have all these enemies getting shot and stuff, right? But then none of the blood splatter effects are actually getting deleted from your scene, you know, like yeah, it's just better to do that. It's just better to, you know, free it from the scene, so then it's not taking up the scene. So yeah, that there is pretty much our script. I can't think of anything else we need to do for that. I think that's pretty much it. And yeah, we're almost done with our blood splatter effects particle system here now. So now what we need to do is we need to actually add in a sound for this, because, you know, you can't really have a blood splatter effect without having a splatter sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Audacity, which is a free program you can use to record audio and edit audio and stuff like that. Alright, so here I am in Audacity. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press the red icon to start recording, and I'm just going to record myself doing a blood splatter sound with my mouth. Alright, I don't know how good that was. Yeah, I think I can do better. Alright, yeah, no, that's a lot better. Alright. By the way, fun fact, in case you guys didn't know, I do a lot of the sounds in my games with my mouth. But yeah, so what I usually like to do whenever I record sounds for my games is I usually like to get an empty part of the sound. So I like to select an empty part of the sound. So then you get a bit of the static in there. And then I go Effect, Noise Removal, Noise Reduction, Get Noise Profile, and then I just select it all, Effect, Noise Removal, Noise Reduction, and then go OK. And then basically that removes like some of the static from the background of the sound. So yeah. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to shorten that down. I was going to play around with the pitch and stuff too, but I think that I did this perfectly as it is. I don't think I need to play around with the pitch or anything like that. So I'm just going to leave this sound as it is, and then when you are done with your blood splatter sound, you just want to export it, of course, to wherever you want to export it to, and yeah. And there it is. So now we can actually preview the sound if you double click it. And there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're then going to go add child node. So you want to make sure you have your blood effects parent selected, right click, go add child node. Then we're going to go audio stream player 3D. And then I'm going to rename this sound to just Splatter. And then with the stream, you just want to select where it says empty, go quick load, and then select your blood splatter sound, and boom. So now where it says autoplay, select this. What this will do is when your blood effects becomes active in the scene, what will happen is the sound will just automatically play. You can also set the max distance if you want to, something like 30 or something like that maybe, you know. You can set it to whatever you want to. You can also play around with the pitch scale as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of different settings to play around with when it comes to the audio stream players, but yeah. So now we have our blood effects all fully set up, and now we can get to the decal. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to now create another new scene, so click on the plus icon up here to add a new scene. It is going to be a 3D scene again, and this time it is going to be a decal. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the type of this node to a decal. Boom. And now our node is a decal. So what we're going to do, of course, is we are going to set the texture. So make sure you have your node selected. Go to where it says textures, albedo, quick load, and then select your texture. And boom, now we have our blood texture set. Now, of course, because we don't have any other meshes in our scene, our blood texture is not going to be projected right now, but it is there. We will know when we do, of course, test it out. You can also set the size if you want to, like if you want to set the size of your, you know, how large your blood splatter is. So if you want it to be, you know, smaller or larger, you can change the size of these XYZ values if you want to, so then you can have it projecting how you want it to project. And yeah, and also you can select which layers, you know, it does project onto as well, of course. You can change all that sort of stuff. And then there's the culling mask. So basically, as you can see here, when we hover over the cull mask, it explains that it specifies which visual instance 3Ds layers this decal will project onto. So basically what that means is, you know, let's say for example you have a mesh in your scene which is on layer 2, but the cull mask of your decal doesn't have 2 selected, so 2 is not selected. What that will mean is that the decal won't be projected onto any mesh which is on layer 2. So this is useful, for example, if you don't want your blood to, you know, project onto certain things that you don't want it to project onto. So if you want to make sure that certain meshes don't have the blood splatter projected onto them, what you can do is, so let's say for example we add a mesh into this scene, right, just as an example. I'd just like to show you guys all this so then, you know, you have all the information you need. So here we have a cube, right? So if I set this onto layer 2 and then turn it off layer 1, as you can see now, our decal is no longer projecting onto this mesh. However, if we set 2 on the cull mask, it will now project onto the mesh. So yeah, so if you don't want certain meshes to be projected onto by the decal, then you can just, you know, change the mesh layer and just set your cull mask accordingly on your decal, and yeah. So now we can delete that mesh. So yeah, so once you've got your decal all set up, you can just set the name for it. So let's say for example we want to set the name to just blood decal, blood underscore decal. I'm then going to press Ctrl S to save it into my scenes folder, go save, and boom. So just like with the particle system, we will be doing a script for our blood decal. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to select our decal, of course, then we're going to go down to where it says script empty in the inspector menu. Go to where it says empty, click new script, and then you can just call your script whatever you want, and I'm going to save it into my scripts folder. Go create, and boom. So now, just like before, what we're going to do is we're going to write await get underscore tree dot create underscore timer. And then what you want to do here is you want to enter in the time of which you want this decal to be, you know, active in your scene for. So if you want your blood decals to be around for 10 seconds, then you can set it to 10 seconds. Or if you don't even want them to disappear at all, you don't even have to do this script if you don't want to. You know, this is totally optional if you want to do this script. But, you know, I'm just showing this for people who don't want to have their decals always in their scene, who want them to have them disappear after a certain amount of time, so yeah. So what I'm going to do for this example in this tutorial is I'm going to be setting this to 10 seconds, so 10.0, and then we're going to be doing false since I don't want this timer to happen whilst the game is paused, then .timeout, and then after the timer happens, then we'll go Q_free, so then the blood decal is then removed from our scene, so yeah. And now we have our decal and blood effects all set up, so they're all pretty much done now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to our player. So yeah, you can go to your player, or you can, it doesn't even have to be specifically your player. It could even be like an enemy. Like this doesn't just apply to your player, by the way. You can, do this blood splatter effect for enemies if you want to as well. So if you want to do this on an enemy, that's totally fine as well. But as an example in this tutorial, I'm just going to be doing it for the player. But, this does also work for enemies and stuff like that as well. So if you want to do blood splatter for an enemy, then, you can continue to watch this tutorial as normal, since it will all work for that as well. So what we're going to be doing is, with our player selected, we're going to go add child node, and it will be a node 3D. So what you want to do is you want to position this towards the bottom of your player, or of your character that you do want to have blood, splatter effect happen to. So you want to move the node 3D down to the bottom of your character, and what we're going to do is we're going to rename this node 3D to blood spawn. So this node 3D is basically going to be the position of where our blood decal spawns. And then with your blood particle effects, you can do the same thing with that as well. Just you can press Control D to duplicate your node 3D, and then you can move it to where you want to. And then that can be like the position of where your blood effects then spawns. So what I recommend you do, right, is for your decal spawn, since we want the decal to be projected at the bottom of the player, so, because it's the blood that's left behind from the splatter, you want to have that at the bottom of your player, so then the decal spawns at the bottom of your player. And then with the actual particle effects, you want that to be at the middle of your player. So make sure you do set that node 3D to the middle of your player, since that will probably look best. Alright, so now that we have our spawn positions in place for our decal and particle effects, what we're going to do now is I'm going to go to my player script. So depending on what character you're doing this for, you can go to that character's script in particular if you've got a script for them. Otherwise, if you don't, then I recommend creating a script. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new variable at the top of my script, and I'm going to call this blood decal. And this will equal to preload. So what we're doing is we're basically like preloading a resource, and then we want to enter in the path of this resource and what this resource will be. So we're going to go res ... then we're going to do the 2 slashes. And then what you want to do is you then want to go to your blood decal, so get the path of your blood decal scene, and that's what the blood decal variable will equal to. And then I'm just going to copy this, paste this, and then with blood decal, I'm just going to remove decal and replace it with effects, just short for effects. And then I'm going to then change decal here to effects as well, since we want to get the particle system. So now we've got variables for both the blood decal and the blood particle system effect. So what I'm going to do now is we're then going to create a new function. So we're going to go func, and I'm going to call this spawn_blood. So now what we're going to do is we are now going to use this function in order to spawn blood onto our player. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new variable called dec, just short for decal, and then this will equal to blood decal.instantiate. So what instantiate means is this basically means that it is going to clone our blood decal scene into our active scene. Whatever level we're in, this decal will now, be cloned into it. So now that we have a blood decal, now what we need to do is we then need to go var, and then I'm just going to write part, short for particle system. You guys can name your variables what you want to, I'm just naming them what I want. And then I'm going to then type in blood underscore effects dot instantiate because we want to instantiate the blood effects as well. So now what we're going to do is we're now going to go get underscore tree dot current scene dot add child. And now what we need to do is we now need to add our decal and our blood effects as children of our scene. So with our decal, we're going to go dec. So basically, get underscore tree dot current scene dot add child. Basically, what that does is that adds a child to the scene. So the decal is going to be now a child of our scene. And then we'll just copy this, and then we can do the same with the blood effects as well. So then we can just write parts here, and boom, so now we have the decal and the particles as children of the current scene. So now what we need to do, of course, is we need to set the position of them. So with dec, we're going to go dec.global underscore transform.origin. So this is the best way to set a position of an object, by doing .global underscore transform.origin. It's a lot more reliable instead of doing .position, I've noticed. And then we can go equals, and then what we'll do here is we'll then do $, and then blood spawn. And the reason as to why we can do $, is because since this script is attached to our player, and the blood spawn node is a child of the player, that means that we can just simply access the blood spawn node with a $. So yeah. So then we're going to do $ blood spawn dot global underscore transform dot origin. And basically what that's doing is that's now setting this new decal, which we've just cloned into our scene, and basically that's just setting the position of it to the same of the blood spawn position. So yeah. And then we're going to be doing the exact same thing with the particle effect as well. So I'm just going to copy this line of code, paste it down here, and then we're going to go part.global underscore transform.origin equals to blood underscore effects spawn dot global underscore transform.origin. So fun fact, with my FPS game I'm making at the moment, it's a little bit more advanced than what we've got going on here. I will actually teach the more advanced method someday, you know, I just felt like teaching the more simpler method today. But with the more advanced method, instead of actually setting the particle effect to like a certain position, you know, within the player, you know, like, you know, a blood effect spawn position on the player, right? Instead, what I like to do with my FPS game is I like to set the blood particle effects position to wherever the bullet hits the enemy in particular. So let's say, for example, I fire a bullet, right, and it hits the enemy's head. What will then happen is the blood effects will then splatter on the enemy's head. But since I'm not, you know, going to be using a gun for this tutorial or anything like that, and I want this tutorial to be more universal, since, you know, some people might not be using physics-based bullets for their games, right? That's why I'm just teaching this easier method today, where we already have like a set position, an already set position for the blood effect spawn. But if you guys want me to do a more advanced one, where I actually, you know, show how to you know, do it more advanced with, like, you know, particle-based bullets, then be sure to let me know down in the comments below, since I'm willing to do that. So yeah, but this is just more of a universal tutorial. So now that is pretty much all we need to do when it comes to our spawn blood function, I'm pretty sure. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to now create a function on my player script, the process function. I know there's already a physics process function, but we don't really need to use that for this, what I'm about to do, so yeah. So I'm just going to write pass here quickly, because what we need to do quickly is we need to make sure that our input system is set up. So if you're watching this tutorial, you most likely already know how Godot's input system already works. But in case you don't know how it already works, let me just show you. So you go project settings, and an input map, and then here is where you can set all the inputs for your game. So currently I've got up, down, left, right, and then a few others. These are basically just, you know, binded to certain keys, so then we can actually, you know, make movements and stuff like that happen in our game. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to add a new action called shoot. So this will be like for, you know, a shooting button. Then we're going to go press the plus icon here. And then what I want to do is I want to then make sure that it is then connected to the left mouse button. So then what happens is whenever we basically check if the shoot action has just been pressed, what that is actually meaning is, has the left mouse button been pressed? So yeah, so now we can close that. So now that you've got your input system set up, or if you've already got it set up, now what we can do is we can now go if input dot is action just pressed, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to enter in the shoot action that I just made. So if we press the shoot action, so the left mouse button, what will happen is we will go spawn blood. So what that will do is that will make the spawn blood function happen. So yeah. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to test this out in our level, of course. I do have a camera set up in the scene so we can see what's going on with our player and stuff. And fingers crossed that everything works out. So let's go play. And now when I press left mouse button, boom, it works. So as you can see, whenever I press left mouse button, what is happening now is we have blood happening. We have blood actually, you know, spawning wherever the player is. So yeah. So as you can see, the blood even goes up all the walls and stuff like that, and it is all disappearing after 10 seconds as well. As you can see, the decals are disappearing. So yeah, everything is working as intended, and you can even hear it as well. It's kind of hard to know which direction I'm in right now because of how I'm in, like, you know, just using a static camera. But yeah. So yeah, decals are very good for like painting as well. You know, you can just paint whatever you want. I mean, this player is basically just a brush at this point. But yeah, it's just a red blood brush. So anyways guys, that is the end of this tutorial. If you did enjoy it, be sure to like, comment and subscribe for more tutorials like this. So yeah, I wanted to quickly show this off today since, you know, I'm making an FPS game at the moment and I did something similar. Anyways guys, I'll see you all soon in my next tutorial, and bye bye.